All right, welcome. This is the Patriot Radio News Hour. It is Friday, May 6th, and Joe is happily going to see one of his sons graduate college, so he had to get over there, and I'm going to go solo. I'm your co-host, Jason. Man, it's been a crazy couple of months, and Joe's been calling it March Madness and April Madness, and the madness continues. He's exactly right about that, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. Joe, when we got off the air from Half Empty Cup of Joe, was pretty sure the markets would continue to tumble, and he thought gold would even go into negative, but gold held yesterday, which is great. It's always good to see everything falling and gold either holding or going up a little bit, and we're seeing the same today. The markets aren't going into complete free fall, but you got another 0.5% down on the Dow, the S&P, and the Nasdaq. You're starting to see the big stocks starting to have stress. Some of the big stocks were losing 5% yesterday. Stocks like Apple and Microsoft and Facebook and all of that. So when the big cap stocks start to tumble, you're on the edge. And now the Dow has kind of gone below that 33,000 number. The S&P has now gone below that 4,200 number. And the Nasdaq has now gone well below the 13,000 number that's been holding for about a year as the inflation rages. So great time to get onto gold and silver. And I think we're going to see in the next months and the next year or so, you're going to see a lot of downward pricing in homes, stocks, everything. And if the inflation continues and assets continue to tumble, it's something that we really haven't seen for a long, long time. So gold and silver, even the ups and downs of gold and silver, I think you'll see at worst gold and silver going sideways sometimes. And then when things get really tough, October is Joe's prediction. Somewhere around there, I agree with that. Gold and silver will bounce and start going up because here's the thing. You don't know where to put your money, and it's hard to figure out where to invest it. To find that one company or that one thing that's going to help grow your money, then you put it in safety. And with inflation, you can't just hold it in cash. So it's going to be gold and silver. So the number to call, we are a Patriot Trading Group. In case you're one of those few people that comes on every day, new listeners, and we're getting new listeners all the time. We are the Patriot Trading Group. We're based out of Arizona. Myself, Jason, and my partner Brian, we're based in the Colorado office as of 2018. The way you get a hold of us is calling 800-951-0592. And that will get you one of the girls in Arizona, and they'll help you with your order because we do have a gold special that we're holding from yesterday. $20 liberties, 1 ounce old gold, pre-33 gold. The gold that we used to be our money that we actually spent. Those coins. They made gold illegal in 1933, and then they confiscated all of these. $5 and $10 and $20 liberties, even the $2.50 liberties, the $1 liberties, all this money that we actually spent that kept America great and kept us free, that was all confiscated, and we may touch on that a little bit today on today's show. I'm going to really go after central banking, is exactly what it is, who it is, and I'm going to play that Glenn Beck piece that we played. I've got it in the queue to play once in a while in your listening experience on different shows. It's a good piece to listen to. Glenn Beck exposed the real spending during the 2008 financial crisis, the housing crash, and what they actually spent, which was not just $5 trillion. And so for some of you listeners, you've heard some of this, but it's worth a listen again. And then as the show progresses, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of my favorite material, which is, this stuff's been going on for a long time. And I'm going to talk about Andrew Jackson much more in detail than I usually do. If you hear me regularly, to hear me talk about it, well, I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about what happened around his elections in 1824, 1828, 1832, what the banks were doing, and why we need to have our country and our treasury controlling the printing and the making of actual fiat or paper money. Gold or not, we should have our own money. A nation cannot be sovereign if it does not control its system of money. We have not been sovereign since 1913. And then we detached gold completely from the funny money in 1971, which has put us on a downward spiral. Because if you look at the timeline, You take us off the gold standard in 1971, and throughout the decade of the 70s, what did you have? Out of control inflation and crazy monetary policies to try to get in control of it. Well, we're at the same place now. Just like we had central banks way back in the 1800s. So there's some similarities and some differences I'm going to draw as we talk a little bit later in the show about what Andrew Jackson did. And when you hear some of the things, his points as to why he needed to eliminate the bank, because this was an argument that went back and forth, and they really tried really hard to get Andrew Jackson, put a lot of pressure on him to just let it go, and just Andrew Jackson, you can do what you want, just let us have our bank, and everything will be fine. And Andrew Jackson was very suspicious of Great Britain. They were very suspicious of the Bank of England, and stood up for this country. And Glenn Beck, guys like Alex Jones, all these guys were all the same. So these $20 liberties, I don't know how. I know we'll try to sell them through the weekend. I don't know where gold and silver will be on Monday. So if you want to get gold at this extraordinarily low price, because gold is up $10 an ounce. I'm going to refresh my screen, but gold is up $10 an ounce while the markets are down. Oil is going up again. It's getting back to $111 to $112. So your gasoline prices, your diesel, which I saw a diesel on the way in, that was $5.50 a gallon, spiraling out of control. And that gold is up 1140 now. So gold keeps going up. The markets keep showing their weakness, and who knows what Monday has in store. So when we get back, I'm going to play a little bit of what did the banks actually do. Let's talk about how they lied to us and cheating us, and then we'll continue from there. Welcome back to the Patriot Trading News Hour. Once again, the number to call to buy $20 liberties for $2,195, 800-951-0592. There will be a time in the near future, I would say later this year, that we probably won't be getting back to this price. If gold has a little slip later in the year, which could happen, maybe, but I wouldn't. If you got some savings that you're going to take it and put it into gold and silver, I would do that immediately, because we could see prices start to climb. We could also see, and Joe's been reporting, and I've watched it. The availability of gold and silver is getting harder and harder. There's a lot of big people, a lot of big moneyed interests that are loading up now while it's cheaper. So I could see when the markets start to really, it's crashing now, and crashes happen over time. And if you're looking at what's happening, it really is when we look back at 2022, 2021, they're going to say it was crashing. This was a part of the years of the crash. It just doesn't really feel like it sometimes at the beginning, because it's not 1,000 points every day for a month or two in a row, like in 2020, when things were going down 1,000 points, 2,000 points. It'd go up 1,000 points, then it'd go down 900 points. That will happen, but it's happening. Look at yesterday, almost 1,100 points. The Dow was down. The Nasdaq was down 5% for one day. A bear market's 20%. So the S&P and the Nasdaq are essentially in bear market anyway. So it's best to get on gold and silver now, because even if gold, if there's a sell-off of everything, even if gold prices were to go down initially, like it did with coronavirus, I think the premiums go up, just like it's been doing in silver for 2 years, where anytime silver goes down, the premiums stay stronger, and you can't get it any cheaper. That's why everyone's paying $10 to $15 over spot for silver now, is because nobody's going to give it up for the paper spot price that we all have to look at day to day. So the silver quarters, for example, that Joe had on the air yesterday during this show, because the silver halves, the BUs sold out. You see how fast the silver went with these huge premiums. Gold will do essentially the same thing. So I would buckle your seatbelt and get ready for gold to go on a huge ride the rest of the year. And you can start by protecting your wealth, your savings, by calling 800-951-0592 and get yourself those $20 liberties for $2,195. So I was talking. If you didn't listen to the show at all, you've heard us talk in January as a FOIA request was brought to light by Glenn Beck, and nobody else wants to talk about it. And I've seen on the internet there's been a few weak attempts to deny Glenn Beck what he reported, which is the Federal Reserve lied about how much money they're printing and what they're giving out, and then Glenn Beck is just simply following the dots and seeing what happened with the repo market in 2019. Very convenient that the markets which we had just gotten the interest rates up. The Fed got the rates up to about 2.5%, and then suddenly in 2019 everything got bad. Well, look what the Fed did yesterday, or 2 days ago. They boosted the rate up a quarter point, and then 2 days ago another half point. And look at the markets just really freaking out. And it's going to be another half point next month or more. Joe doesn't think 3/4 of a point. We don't know. And look at how much the markets are freaked out by this just with a half a point and a quarter point previous. In 2019, this was happening, and the repo market started freaking out. And they wouldn't say which banks were basically becoming insolvent, but it was happening. Okay, and then they put the rates back down to zero, and coronavirus magically appeared. Out of nowhere, here comes a pandemic, right in the midst of a massive market crash that was getting ready to happen anyways. And the powers that be did their plunge protection and crashed the Dow down 40%, and then magically a few months later, they just had it coming up, and gold came down at the same time, and then gold hit all-time record highs in August. We're going to see that happen again, and I'm getting the feeling that this is going to be what they talk about the new normal. Remember a year ago, 2 years ago? The new normal could quite literally be market crashes and then markets coming back and markets crashing again, and each time it does this, it's going to get harder to come back. And I don't know if we come back from the next one, but if we do, it'll be short-lived. I mean, we're only 2 years out from the big one in 2020. It happens again this year, which it is happening this year. We could have another crash in 2023. This could be a lot like the Great Depression. In 1929, we had the huge stock market crash that just continued to go on and on. In 1933, it just got worse again. There was no way around it. The Federal Reserve took over in 1913 and was already crashing markets and trying to control everything about American society, planning World War II. They planned World War I. And then we ended up with the whole new world economic system with Bretton Woods. Hey, America, great place to be, new world reserve currency, but the rest of the world became kind of indebted to this new money. So let's talk about what the Fed did. I'm going to have Glenn Beck illustrate what happened in 2008, 2009, 2010 through 2012, where he thinks everything is going, which I agree with what he says, what they've been doing since. And when we get back, we'll talk.
I want to show you how shady this really is. The 2008 official bailout, officially, TARP, which started the Tea Party because we were so outraged that the government would spend $700 billion on TARP. We thought that was crazy. Remember that number. $700 billion, your money, they just gave it to the banks. We were outraged. And then we had to spend another 750, on infrastructure, 750 billion. So about 1.5 trillion dollars was spent just on these two programs. That was the Tea Party. Then the bank said, the Fed, well, all those banks, remember those banks we showed you, the 12? They are struggling because they made some. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our own money, they print it, and we're going to buy all those bad assets for $3.5 trillion. So what they told us at the time that I recorded that was that they had injected $5 trillion into the money supply. Okay? That's what they told us. Here's the problem. That's a lie. All of that is a lie. Okay? The problem is, again, the official number. It's not 5 trillion. A little misleading. The numbers have just been FOIA'd by an independent group. The Fed fought with them all the way to the Supreme Court. We were never supposed to know the truth. These are sealed for 2 years, but then after the 2 years, the Fed was like, no, we got to seal these for 10 years. Okay, so we haven't known this since 2010. We had no access. These are the 2010 numbers they're just coming out with. We want to thank the Levy Economics Institute. They published these findings. They're the ones who got them released. Between 2008 and 2010, it wasn't this. No, they bailed things out a little differently. For instance, they gave Bank of America $1.3 trillion. Then Merrill Lynch, Love Merrill Lynch. They got $1.9 trillion. Morgan Stanley, they got $2.0 trillion. And Citibank, $2.5 trillion. Now, I'm not very good at math, but I think those add up to more than this. And actually, no matter how bad of math I am, I'm going to add up and show you what the real number is. It's not 5 trillion. $29 trillion. A little more than the official 5 trillion that we've all been force-fed. Now, if you think, you're upset now, Citigroup got all of this, Merrill Lynch, all of it, okay? That's mad. That's maddening, right? But did you know that they inflated our money, which is causing your inflation, and they didn't just give it to the banks of the U.S.? No. We were printing and loaning money out to banks all over the world. We gave billions to Scotland and to Germany and Switzerland and the UK and France and Belgium. We were never meant to know any of this. It was supposed to be a secret. At $2.5 trillion, the Fed effectively nationalized Citibank. It's also interesting, Citi, because Citi co-owns the New York Fed. Wait a minute, so it's like one hand reaching in, grabbing $2.5 trillion, putting it on the other hand, and that hand puts it into this pocket. That's what's happening. It's public-private partnerships, all endorsed by the government. 21st century fascism with you paying the price. Now, this is horribly corrupt, but this is what they want for the entire system with the Great Reset. But now I've got some really bad news because this was just in 2010, okay? Go this way. What's really interesting here is what's happening lately. Because, do you remember, it was September 2019, before anything was going on with COVID, and I was on this program and I was like, hey, something's wrong. Because they're loaning $500 billion loan to the banks per week. It started the first 24 hours, it was $50 billion. Hey, if banks are short, we'll loan you $50 billion. And you got to pay it back within 24. And then it was, you can hold it for a week. And then it was 3 months. Now I don't even know if there's a time limit. It started at $50 billion, but the last I heard, we were doing $500 billion a week. Okay, that's was September. This is before the coronavirus, and I said something big is coming. What's wrong here? Okay, well let me just show you what's wrong. Because I mean, if you ever wondered any of that cash directed to foreign banks, the 2-year threshold gone by, information just released, and we know now where the Fed was sending all of this money. Let's go to 3.7. That went to our good friends in Japan. Don't you love that? 1.5 went to the UK. 1.4 went to Germans. So we gave more. We gave more to the Japanese, the United Kingdom, and the Germany than we did our own system. Officially. Officially. Unofficially, not even close. We are not just collapsing our own system with this crap. We are spreading inflation on a global scale. Another prediction of mine from about 2007. The world will hate us. We have spent trillions and sent trillions to Japan. What's causing all this inflation? Hello? We decided, hey, is anybody having a problem with inflation? Yep. Japan, 2-year high. The 1.5 trillion to the UK. Highest inflation in 30 years, so they're on our track. And Germany, Germans love inflation. Thank you very much, Fed. They're up 24%. Highest since World War II. Who was involved in World War II? Oh, yeah. All of this predates any of the massive amounts of COVID relief spending. As of now, the official numbers for that are $10 trillion.
We're going to hit the break here. I'm going to finish off about another minute of Glenn Beck, and then I'm going to remember some of the stuff he's saying, and then I'm going to go back in history. Because it doesn't really matter. What happened in the 1800s, that doesn't really matter, right? Well, if we would learn from history, maybe we wouldn't let things like a central bank rob from us. We'll be right back.
No, sir.
Patriot Radio News Hour. We're going to finish up with that Glenn Beck piece where he's like, hey, look, the Fed, they bailed us out. And the too big to fail banks, well, if you don't bail them out, the entire economy of America and the world will just collapse. And I'm gonna be covering some content. I'm going to read some stuff about Andrew Jackson in the 1830s where the same thing happened. You better let us have our bank or the whole world will economically collapse. And you know what? They should have just let those banks die. We should have gotten rid of the Federal Reserve and central banking. Sure, the powers that be are going to make life miserable. I'll tell you right now, if we ever yanked the Federal Reserve out of power, they would make life completely miserable on everybody, especially now, 200 years later, that they have more control, more ownership of the assets that we use every day. But it would come back very quickly. It's funny. It's a funny trick that the bankers play. They think they've got us by the throat, but if you simply detach yourself from them, yeah, there's going to be some pain and suffering, but it would come back very quickly, and we'll cover that. So let's finish what Glenn Beck was saying about how bad he's going to talk about $1 trillion a week is potentially what they've been spending since coronavirus.
But they're not reporting the lending from the Fed. Those numbers aren't going to be released for another 2 years. Wait for it. Maybe we won't even find out. Okay? But let's speculate. Let's just use what we know they've been saying. We know they've been saying it was first $500 billion, now it's $1 trillion a week that they were pumping into all of those banks. Okay? So let's just do the math. From April 2020 to now has been 95 weeks. Since April. So, again, not good at math. That's $95 trillion. Now, I don't know if that number's true, but it no longer sounds crazy to me because they lied to us about $5 trillion, and we now know officially it was $30 trillion. And that was without the global pandemic. Modern monetary theory is happening right now.
So there you go. That's, $1 trillion a week. And Joe does his best every day to give you the numbers as the Fed reports it, as the government reports it, as the economic system, all the manufacturers, all of the big businesses, the markets, the indices, all the indicators like the Dow and the S&P and all this stuff. We report it as it's shown to us, but it's all a lie. I've many times you'll hear me with Joe, and I'll say, yeah, it's all fake, it's all phony, it's all rigged, because it is. It really, really is. And one thing I want to kind of stress on as I go into Andrew Jackson for a little bit, Japan got $3.7 trillion, and they reported officially during the housing crash that we printed, that we gave out $5 trillion. The Fed did $5 trillion in damage control. The government and the Fed does all the printing anyway. So $3.5 trillion bought up by the Fed, and $1.5 trillion for stimulus and building projects and trying to bring back America from this really bad crash. But then right there in the FOIA request, $3.7 trillion to Japan. How does that help America? How about $1.5 trillion to England, 1.4 to Germany, and that's just the three countries he mentioned. So remember this. Now, I'll do a really quick history on Andrew Jackson. Born in America. His early years, his dad died early on, and then the war for independence happened, and his mom, would help with soldiers and did the best she could, and ended up getting sick and dying. His brother and him were both captured, he was like a teenager, like 13 years old, and they were helping out the cause, and they were caught, and they were put in jail, and a sword was slashed across Andrew Jackson's hand and face because he wouldn't clean the boots of a British officer. This is the kind of men we used to have in this country. developed a big hatred for the British and the Bank of England. And I don't think as a kid he really knew what the Bank of England was. He just knew that he hated the British. Well, the British in Great Britain and King George, they were all controlled by the Bank of England. Central banking was well on its way to global dominance. So, as he grew older, he self-educated. Off and on schooling, he became a lawyer by his own teachings, and he was considered a capable lawyer. But those that were really in college and really for higher education, they considered Andrew Jackson really stupid because he didn't really take a lot of years and just immerse himself into college and become a highly educated. He was more connected to the common man. He was our first log cabin president. So he became a lawyer. Yeah, he became a soldier. He became a congressman. He became a senator. He became a governor. I mean, this is a guy that, you talk about public service. This was the guy, right? He was the hero of the Battle of New Orleans. Old Hickory, right? So he ran for president in 1824, and this is where the bankers had a bank in play. They had the first bank in the United States, which was chartered in 1791, right after the Constitution was ratified. Bang, we had central bank, and they basically convinced our brand new government, because you don't know how to handle money, and we have all this war debt to France and other places. We're already in debt. Hey, England and the Bank of England especially, they did their job. Did they lose the war? I don't know. They got their central bank. Maybe they couldn't tax us like crazy and take all of our assets in payment of those taxes. They couldn't just take your whole field or take everything you're mining or whatever your goods are for your business. They couldn't do it directly, but indirectly with interest paid on loans, they were benefiting heavily from the American system. Well, that central bank went for 20 years, and then we got rid of that bank. By one vote in Congress, they was like, you know what? Here we are 20 years later, and this central bank isn't really working. And there were still some common sense, smart American politicians that just looked at the facts and then voted against a recharter of the first bank in the United States. They got rid of it, and the War of 1812 commenced. That war was, as we're taught in school, we won that war too. We got rid of the British. That's twice we beat them. Yeah. Well, but with huge war debt came the second bank in the United States. Did we really win that war? And this second bank was much worse than the first bank. Okay? So now we have war loans, and we're back in debt, and the banks are starting to roll in it again. The Bank of England, the mother bank. Now we have the second bank in the United States. And that was a 20-year charter. So in 1824, Andrew Jackson was running for president, and some banker-backed candidates, Henry Clay and John Quincy Adams. And John Quincy Adams was a little more independent. Henry Clay worked for the banks. He's your typical modern politician. He's worked with the banks. He has his interests. And, what happened was Andrew Jackson won that election. He had the most delegates. He had the most votes, but he didn't get 50% because there was 4 men running. And John Quincy Adams got second, so Henry Clay did very poorly. So Henry Clay and John Quincy Adams, they had a corrupt bargain. They went into a smoke-filled room, and Henry Clay got a good position, gave his votes to John Quincy Adams, and now Andrew Jackson saw what a banker-backed candidate can do to an electoral system, and he runs for president in 1828. And wait till you hear what happens and what Andrew Jackson says about the banks when we get back. Patriot Radio News Hour. Give us a call, 800-951-0592. Get yourself into some hard money savings. Get that money out of the bank. Don't be foolish. You're going to hold it for even 6 months to a year, especially if you're going to hold it for longer than a year. There's no reason not to put it in gold and silver because you are going to retain the value of your savings. Your hard-earned time is sitting in those digits, and they steal it from you. These central banks have learned that the idea of money, you control that idea, you can control the people, and you get to steal their time. They're not really stealing their money from you, these central bankers. They're stealing your time. While you're running like a rat in that wheel, not getting anywhere, you're providing them with all the energy and resources they need for their nice, comfy, easy lives. So give us a call, 800-951-0592. I was talking about Andrew Jackson. He lost the election in 1824. He won the election, but you got to have more than 50%. So it went to the House of Representatives. They were going to, that's actually what happens if you don't get 50% of the vote. We almost had this happen in 1992. with Ross Perot, but that's another story. But corrupt bargain. The bankers got together and they got in a smoke-filled room, and Henry Clay's like, "Here, take my delegates, and you win, and we get rid of that anti-banker, get rid of Andrew Jackson. No, we don't want him." And so I think that the country was shocked by this result, and Andrew Jackson was infuriated, and his supporters, his party, which there wasn't a party until 1828. Now you have the Democrat Party, the Democrat Republicans, and here comes 1828, and Andrew Jackson is just blown into office. Henry Clay didn't have John Quincy Adams didn't have a prayer in a one-on-one election versus Andrew Jackson. So now Andrew Jackson's president, and he's like, you know what? I'm getting rid of that bank. That thing is evil. It's destroying. Economically, we just can't move forward in this country. They're stealing from us, and they played a funny game. So that 20-year charter, these were 20-year charters for these central banks. It was 1816 after the War of 1812 had ended in 1815. The new bank got his charter in 1816. So the charter was set to end in 1836. So the election of 1832 meant whoever wins that election is going to be able to control the next charter. If you have Henry Clay winning the election of 1832, then he will take his banker friends and recharter and happy days, right? But Andrew Jackson in 1828, his first term, he's like, I'm getting rid of the bank now. And so Henry Clay got together, and let me read a few things here, and they're Andrew Jackson might not even let us get a shot at this new recharter. We better do something. He's president now. The Renewal of the Bank of the United States Charter came up before Congress in the summer of 1832. So what was happening is in the summer of 1832, during the middle of a re-election of Andrew Jackson, they decided, hey, we'll give him so much heat that he won't be able to we'll show the whole country how powerful the bank is. Even Andrew Jackson's not tough. Old Hickory's not tough enough. If everybody in the country is really pushing for this bank as far as the powers that be, not the people. Battle lines were drawn with Jackson and his supporters on one side and his opponents, including Daniel Webster, Henry Clay, Nicholas Biddle of the bank on the other. Clay was on retainer from the bank, encouraged Congress to bring the matter of renewal early to resolution in 1832 to forestall any future actions that Andrew Jackson was getting ready to do. The bill was determined in the Senate on June 11th, 1832, and passed by a vote of 28 to 20. So the Senate's like, yep, let's recharter the bank. Just enough banker-backed candidates to get that thing in. It was voted upon in the House of Representatives on July 3rd, and it was passed. Early recharter, the Congress, 109 votes to 76. So from 1824 to 1832, in those 8 years, they got a lot. They were really building their banker-backed candidates to keep this theft of the people in place. So here it is, July 4th. All the pressure on Andrew Jackson, his supporters, a lot of the political supporters in the new political party, the Democrats, they're all, you know what, man? If he's getting advice, you better, this may not be good for us, because if you veto this thing and things go bad, that's it. We're done. So from every side, Andrew Jackson was getting we have to leave this bank alone. We have to let them have their powers. And on July 4th, Andrew Jackson vetoed the recharter. So here's a message that was prepared with some help of Amos Kendall and Roger Taney, Levi Woodbury, Andrew Donaldson. They put together this is Andrew Jackson and his people. They put together a list of reasons as to why we cannot have a bank. And just listen to some of this, how brilliant and how just common sense minded this stuff is. Eight things, he said. Number one, bank stock valued, the bank stock, the second bank in the United States, is valued at $8 million and is held by foreigners. If the bank were to be rechartered, the stock would increase by 20 to 30%, thus making this a gift to foreigners without the slightest advantage accruing to the American citizen. Number two, if it is granted that the bank is a monopoly, then a fair price such as $17 million should be charged for it instead of the $200,000 that the government would receive under this current arrangement with the party. They're saying that, hey, the bank is supposed to be kicking back profits to America for giving them their charter, and then it's not happening. Number 3, the Bank of the United States Charter excludes any national competition. Other private interests have offered to take a charter on terms more favorable to the United States than offered by the Second Bank of the United States. Hey, no competition is a sin, Rockefeller, right? Number 4, the Bank of the United States extends more favorable terms to its branches than to general citizens. For example, the St. Louis branch can readily have its notes accepted anywhere on par, whereas a merchant in St. Louis has no such possibility and must offer his paper at a discount outside the city. I'm going to give a few more of the reasons why Andrew Jackson and the anti-bankers knew that we can't have this bank anymore. We got to get rid of it. By the way, they offered a $50,000 reward to people that somebody just happens to kill the president. Someone might get $50,000. It was kind of rumored. It was out there, right? Andrew Jackson, first president they tried to kill, 1835. We'll be right back. All right, final segment, Patriot Radio News Hour. If you want $20 Liberties, 1 ounce old gold coins, $2,195. Give us a call at 800-951-0592. Now, Andrew Jackson killed the bank, killed the central bank, and there would not be a central bank in place after the 1830s until 1913. He essentially destroyed the central bank's ability to steal from the American public for 80 years. Now, there was other ways the bankers were causing trouble in those 80 years, including the Civil War and a whole lot of depressions and problems, because that's how you get people to capitulate to your power. But Andrew Jackson stood firm. They tried to kill him, and he stood strong, and it was really for the American people. I want to read a few more of these, the reasons why he vetoed the early recharter of the bank in 1832 on Independence Day. These are some of the reasons, and these reasons are so well stated. Bank stock held by foreigners cannot be taxed, thus depriving the government of revenue and giving foreign-held stock a value of 10 to 15% higher than the stock held by the Americans. As states can tax only the amount of stock held by its own citizens in the state, and most stock is held by out-of-state people, branches can operate within a state of a favorable tax advantage. Andrew Jackson paid off the national debt after doing this with tariffs and Western land movement, and that's how it worked. There was no federal income tax. He didn't need federal income tax. He could print the money of the United States, and he had it backed by gold. Let's see. Of the 25 directors, 5 are appointed by the government, the rest by stockholders who are required to be American citizens. The rechartering of the bank would accelerate the flow of stock into foreign hands, eventually giving the reduced number of Americans the power to vote the 20 directors in. Even though those Americans might actually own a small amount of the stock, they would not be able to re-elect themselves from year to year, and who would yield a power dangerous to the institutions of our country. Basically saying, this central bank, it looks like Americans can control this, but after the 20 of the positions would eventually be foreign held, which that's where we're at today. If most of the stock goes to foreign interests in a given country, we can go to war with that country. All of the operations of the bank within would be to aid hostile fleets. He's basically saying, look, foreign entities, if we go to war, we're paying for them to go to war with us because we're paying them returns on this central bank power. So there, think about what Glenn Beck said earlier in the show as we're going to come to the end of this hour. Hey, back in 2008, we gave $3.7 trillion to Japan. And we gave $1.5 trillion to the UK and to Germany. That's not for America. That's not for this country. We've lost our sovereign ability to run our own country. And for people that like the global system and think that's great, eventually you give all the power into one source, and that one source will then wrest all freedoms and liberties away from you. So do everything you can to keep yourself as free as possible. And when it comes to economics, Yeah, there's ways to invest and make money, and I'm all for it. But when it comes to saving and holding the value of your savings, it's gold and silver. 800-951-0592. It's a great day. Gold is up. The market's down. We're holding that price for the weekend on $20 liberties. Joe and I will be back on Monday.